Okay, good morning, party people. It is January 24th. It is Wednesday. So today for our daily reading, we are in the New Testament. So we're doing Matthew 13:14, Colossians 3:4, Revelations 9:10, Psalm 79:80, and Proverbs 19. Okay, so that's for our daily reading. So we're starting a new book today. I was going to go back to the New Testament. I was thinking about doing Romans, but I feel like so few people touch the Old Testament, and I have such a passion for the Old Testament. So I think I'm going to stick with some of the Old Testament stuff for right now. And again, my entire focus for these videos is to expose people to the power and the awesomeness of the Old Testament so that people don't leave them out of their study. It's absolutely imperative that you guys read the Old Testament as well as the New. Everything in the New Testament is founded upon the Old Testament, right? There's all kinds of tiny little details of the New Testament that are referenced and mentioned that many people will pass over, not recognizing the power and the and what that's implying, because it's referring back to, many times there's just a sentence that will be mentioned in the New Testament, and the entire point of it being mentioned is missed because people don't understand the Old Testament and what that's referring to. A perfect example of that is the story in the New Testament when Jesus is dealing with tells the story of the Good Samaritan and the woman at the well, right? These are situations where if you don't understand the Old Testament and the history of the Jewish people with the Samaritans, how they're actually related to the Samaritans, how we studied in Nehemiah and Ezra, how and in the story of Zerubbabel that the Samaritans are actually coming against them, rebuilding the temple. I mean, there's so much detail in the Old Testament that it's just so important that you understand. Otherwise, you're never going to fully grasp the New Testament. So, and I'm not saying I understand it all, because I in no way do. But I just wanted to continue to focus on that for right now, and we'll see where God leads. Okay, so today, because we just finished Amos, I wanted to continue in that same time frame, right? So let me show you where we're at today in the book of Hosea. Okay, so this is the timeline of Israel. We just finished little Amos, right? Amos was the prophet that came from the southern kingdom and went up north to give some prophecies against the northern kingdom about what was going to happen with the Assyrian when they collapsed right here under Assyria. So here now, under the study of Hosea, he's right after Amos, right? So he's a contemporary, clearly, so they probably knew each other, although it doesn't say that they knew each other. But he is going to be prophesying right at the very end of the northern kingdom before they fall. And you're going to see here, then it will be the southern kingdom that will be remaining. Now he's going to be addressing the same situation that Amos was. The nation is very prosperous. Things are going great militarily. Things are looking great. However, the entire social structure of the community has fallen apart. And Hosea in particular is focusing on the worship of false gods, the worship of the Baals, and all of the false temple worship. And like many prophets we see in the Old Testament, God calls Hosea to do some things physically to represent what is going on spiritually. And so this is pretty heavy. We see this, I think it was Jeremiah who was told to walk around naked and to lay on the ground on one side of his body for so many days and the other side of his body another so many days. God sometimes has prophets act out physically the things that are either going to be happening or things that are currently happening to represent the apostasy that is happening, to try and get people's attention, right? So we have in the book of Hosea, Hosea was from the northern kingdom. So unlike Amos that we just finished studying, Amos was from the southern kingdom that God sent him up to the northern kingdom. Hosea was from the northern kingdom, okay? So Hosea is going to be asked to marry a woman. God tells him to marry a woman. And there was debate in the commentary as to whether or not she was a woman of prostitution already, or that God prophesied that she would become unfaithful. The general consensus is that she was a woman that he married that became unfaithful. God knew that this would happen and told Hosea that this would happen. And so the children are likely not even Hosea's. But there is another group that believed that she was a temple prostitute, and that God said, go marry a temple prostitute. and this was to represent the unfaithfulness of Israel. So, but generally, the people that most of the commentators, the scholars, believe that she was a normal person who ended up getting involved in something that, that involved her having adultery. So, here's the beginning of the book of Hosea. So the word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. So those are the kings of the southern kingdom. And in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. So that's the king of the northern kingdom. When the Lord began to speak by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord." So here, right at the very beginning, he's saying, go take a wife of harlotry, children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry for departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, "Call his name Jezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel." So this is referring back. Now this is very powerful and this is pretty deep. This is referring back. It says, "I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu." So this is going back to 2 Kings chapter 9, when this king here, when God anointed Jehu, where is he up here? I don't know if you can read this. I can't read it backwards. There's a king up here named Jehu. I can't see him. But God anointed him to kill the previous king. God allowed him to kill the previous king and all the descendants and the worshipers of Baal because they had departed so atrociously from God. So God actually anointed Jehu to take over. So in 2 Kings chapter 9, this is looked at as a good thing. However, here in Hosea, it's looked at as a bad thing. And it says, "Bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel." So he's going to avenge what happened by the hand of Jehu at God's direction and authorization, and it will come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. So so he names his child Jezreel after the situation that happened in Jezreel by Jehu against the kings of Israel. So I started thinking about this because it doesn't say why Hosea is looking at this as negative when the previous author of 2 Kings is saying this is a positive thing. And the one thing that came to my mind is that, remember when King David was running from Saul, he said, "I will not touch God's anointed," even though he was given multiple situations where he could avenge himself and he could kill Saul, because Saul was unjustly chasing David nonstop, trying to kill David. When David had already been anointed king, he knew he was going to be king. And David said, "I will not touch God's anointed." So there may be something along the lines of that, that even though Ahab and his lineage had departed from God, they were still anointed by God to be king. And even though Jehu had been given permission by God to do this, maybe he didn't have to do it, and he did it anyways. And it was a great slaughter, right? So he's naming his first child Jezreel, and then it says, and so that's an announcement of judgment. So the first child by the woman that is committing adultery represents judgment. It represents the judgment of God back then on the house of Ahab and that was committed by Jehu, but it's also announcing judgment on what's going to happen in that same area because of the judgment, right? Because of what Jehu did. And then it says, "And then she conceived again and bore a daughter. Then God said to him, 'Call her name Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah. Will save them by the Lord their God, and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow, nor by sword or battle, by horses or horsemen.'" So that's the end of the section there. He says, call this child, the next child that he has, she's called Lo Ruhamah, which means not loved. So I'm out of time. This is taking longer than I thought because this is a short chapter. So hang tight. We're going to do number 2 and we should be done. Read your Bible. Jesus is coming. Peace.